Hey, welcome to Soul Hub. So, in this episode, we are tackling a big one, which is why. Why is the universe the way it is? What is the point of life? And even though this seems like such a complex topic, and in some ways it is, the answer doesn't have to be complex at all. And it can actually be relatively brief, but in being that way, it can actually be much more useful and helpful, which is what matters. What matters is not spouting a bunch of, fascinating sounding theory. It's about what can be useful in your life. And so a couple people sent in questions about this in the community, and one of them at least was having an existential crisis, has been having one for quite some time regarding this subject. Like, what's the point of it all? Why is it the way it is? And so I'd like to answer that from my perspective, but then I'd also like to give you something more, which is a way to not fall into existential crisis and the kind of secret to transcending this whole thing altogether. And so let's start with my perspective on what's the point of it all, why. And in the simplest of terms, you are here to allow the functioning, the purpose of the universe to unfold. Now, what does that mean? That sounds pretty grand. Well, think of it this way. Imagine this unmanifested, infinite potentiality. It's not manifested, so in a way it's nothing at least that the mind can understand, but it's something for lack of better words. It wants to know itself, but as an undifferentiated wholeness, oneness. It can't know itself in a certain way. It can only be itself. And so how does it know itself? Well, it can know itself by creating a seeming other from which to have another point of view to view itself. All right? And so what am I talking about here? Well, what I'm talking about is this unmanifested, this absolute could be called, in other words, God or the creator, whatever you want to call it. The name doesn't really matter. But it's this undifferentiated wholeness, this oneness. And just like a knife can cut many other things, but it can't cut itself. Just like an eye can see, but it can't see itself directly. Just like a scale can weigh so many things, but it can't weigh itself. If you are everythingness, and there's nothing separated seemingly or differentiated inside of you, how do you know yourself? You just are yourself. And so if you want to know yourself, what you can do is you can create a seemingly infinite array of beings, of things. And here's the thing, they can't be separate from you because you are everything. So it's really an illusion. What you do is you create seemingly infinite numbers of souls and beings and things and, whatever forms. And yet it's actually you that is every single one of these forms. So what consciousness here is doing, the creator is doing, is it's creating an infinite number of forms and beings, but it is them. And it is knowing itself through an infinite number of perspectives. So you can think of yourself as a point of view of the infinite, or a point of view of God. You're a perspective, a way that this beingness, this consciousness, is knowing itself. It's knowing itself through the seeming duality. Because if it's just undifferentiated oneness, it can only be it. Once there's a seeming duality, this seeming aspect can know this one. Right? So right now, here I am speaking to you. it seems like here's the ad speaking to whoever you are out there, maybe, telling you something you think you didn't know, but in truth, it's just consciousness. It's literally this beingness, the infinite, the absolute. It's talking to itself, literally. Trying to awaken itself out of the dream of form that it got sucked into, thinking that, oh, I am actually this separate being. I am actually this person. I'm the one who's in this existential crisis, wondering what it's all about. What am I doing here? Why is it the way it is? When in reality, I am it. I'm the whole thing. And this is just one small perspective that is experiencing it in this way. So here I am, consciousness, speaking to myself, consciousness. There you are, consciousness, listening to itself, consciousness. We're playing this game, this play, this theater, that we are these separate beings. And what's the point of it all? Why? To know ourselves from an infinite number of perspectives, just for the experience of it. Just because. It's like the curiosity of a child playing hide and seek with itself, gets lost in form, thinks it is actually these forms, and then reawakens and realizes, oh, I created these forms so I could know myself, but to know myself consciously, not through an undifferentiated oneness, but now consciously as a seeming separate being, knowing the whole, knowing the non-separate. It's beautiful if you look at it that way. Now, having said all of that, that is just a model. That is just an approximation of reality. These are just words, and words can't capture the truth. So what I just said, don't cling to it as truth. The mind wants to cling to it. The mind, the very mind that is asking why, is the mind that is creating your existential crisis. So if I were to stop right here and tell you, well, that's the way it is, so it's beautiful, you have a divine function, enjoy it, I would be doing you a disservice, because on the one hand, while that is, I believe, a reflection of the truth and can be helpful to see things from that perspective and can give some meaning, on the other hand, if you cling to that as a conclusion, as that is reality, it can become an ideology in your mind. And that's never helpful, because you won't live that reality. You won't experience the truth of it unless you start actually going from concepts, which this is what they are. I'm just telling you some concepts that are a helpful model of reality. They're not truth themselves, and going to actual truth. And so what is actual truth? And so actual truth is actually diving into this reality, diving into this oneness that is behind all of creation, and feeling it, experiencing it from a experiential level, not from a mind-based, thought-based level. And so here's the secret to transcending, these existential crises. The secret is you can't approach them from the level of mind. The mind that is asking why, even if it gets an answer, will have gotten no closer to the truth. Maybe it'll stop your, feeling a deep crisis, but you won't actually be closer to the truth. And it'll still ask why. And so the real thing is to stop asking why. Use a helpful model. Okay, maybe that'll quiet the mind down a bit. This is a helpful model to look at things, but then go to the source, go to the truth of the beingness. Go within yourself to experience it. And if you want to know how to do that, my previous episode taught exactly that. It was my top 5 ways for entering into a state of presence or higher consciousness, which gets you in touch with that formless essence that you are, that created the whole universe to begin with. But the idea is, once you have a certain model that is helpful, then stop asking why. Don't grasp onto it. Don't believe it's the truth. And if this model is not helpful, then you can still relieve your existential crisis by realizing that there's no actual answer that will truly satisfy. So why not drop the question? It's the question that is creating your suffering. You think your existential crisis is coming from the fact that you don't know why. The truth is that your existential crisis is coming from the fact that you need to know why. What if instead you opened up to accepting a beautiful mystery? What if you rested in not knowing and you fully embraced that? You see, your suffering is coming from resisting the not knowing right now. I need to know. What's the purpose of life? What's the purpose of my life? Why is the universe this way? If I don't know, I suffer. But that's just an assumption. What if you opened up to the mystery completely and you fully embraced, I don't know anything? Literally. I might have models about reality. They could approximate the truth, maybe not. But I don't know anything. The only thing you can know is I am. That's it. I am. I am what? I don't know. I'm perceiving. There is awareness. That's all you can really know. There's awareness. And I seem to be it. That's all you can really know. Everything else can be questioned. And so why not sink into that? Why not let that be your answer versus a conceptual answer of why and what's the point? And believe me, I'm talking from personal experience. I've had my own share of existential crises, and some of them were outright hellish. But what I learned from all of them was I was always in the mind, trying to get an answer with the mind. That will never work. And once I started dropping into presence, into experiencing just the isness of the moment without thought, without story, without narrative, without concept, all of a sudden, my need to know the answers dropped away and a fulfillment started arising without knowing. And yet, funny enough, there's now a greater knowing. And that knowing is not conceptual. There's a way to know the truth of the universe, of life, that the mind can never understand, but you just know. That's the beauty of it. So that's what I would recommend to anyone that's grappling with such questions. You can have helpful models of reality, but if you continue asking why, you stay stuck in the mind, and that's what creates the suffering. It's the resistance to not knowing that's creating the suffering. It's not actually not knowing. Embrace the not knowing. Open up to it. Live your life in mystery, as mystery. It becomes a beautiful adventure. And then things will change. And you'll start discovering what you've always wanted to know, but in a very different way. So I hope that helps. Thank you for your questions. And as always, you can ask your question by emailing support@soulhub.com. Thank you so much.